Tales of hauntings, murder, and scary mysteries. Every week, Twisted 2's dives into a pair of uniquely terrifying true stories that are worthy of a more in-depth look. For this week, we focus on the stunning case of the CIA's Operation Midnight Climax and the baffling story of a food engineer named Gunther Stoll. Get ready for scary mysteries, Twisted 2's. Number 1. Operation Midnight Climax. April 13th, 1953 may not be a significant date for most people, but for the CIA and their subsequent test subjects, it's a crucial date. On this day, CIA Director Allen Dulles greenlit Project MKUltra. This was a secret CIA program that included various unethical experiments conducted on agents as well as civilians. Its main purpose was to explore the use of mind-controlled drugs that could aid the military in extracting the truth from P.O.Ws and world leaders. One specific program attached to the project was dubbed Operation Midnight Climax, and it was highly unethical. Dr. George Hunter White, using the alias Morgan Hall, put this operation together for the CIA. In it, he used prostitutes in the San Francisco area and later on expanded to other places to entice men and serve them alcohol that was heavily doused with LSD without their knowledge. The women would then go on to perform what they were paid for, while various CIA personnel would watch from behind a two-way mirror. The entire scene would be recorded, and the candidates were then specifically chosen because they might feel embarrassed if the situation were ever exposed. Their primary goal was to study if sex can be used to make a man talk. Soon the operation grew and they began dosing random people with acid who were on the beaches or in restaurants and bars. Aside from the LSD, there were also other exotic drugs used on the victims, so they could try and discover a concoction that worked. There were also people that volunteered for the experiments, and often they were subjected to more horrific experiments, but the majority was often done on men without their knowledge. In one experiment, a group of volunteers were made to take LSD for 77 days straight. The subjects were promised drugs for each day, and no follow-up was ever done on how they fared. Even federal agents were doused with acid unknowingly, and some of them had lifelong consequences because of it. One of those men was Wayne Ritchie. He was a U.S. Marshal and in 1957 attended a holiday party at the U.S. Post Office building. He recalls drinking a bourbon and soda and cracking jokes with other agents when he suddenly felt the entire room spin. He couldn't handle it and tried to escape, first locking himself in his office, trying to gain composure. When he couldn't, he headed to his apartment where he got into a fight with his girlfriend. He started feeling paranoid and thought everyone was out to get him. Not realizing what was happening and clearly high on LSD, he soon returned to his office, got his service revolvers, and tried to rob a bar. Ritchie was arrested and fined but managed to avoid jail time. It wasn't until later on that he realized he might have been a victim of White's illegal program. At the party, White was also in attendance, and it was likely that Ritchie and many others were drinking his drug-laced drinks. The program had real consequences in the lives of those affected, and it resulted in at least one death. Others endured lifelong mental and psychological damage as a result of the brutal and inhumane experiments. When it was finally discovered that this was happening in the late 60s, the project was shut down and caused a huge embarrassment for the agency. The CIA was forced to inform those who had been a part of it unwillingly. However, most of them were hard to trace because the majority of the files were destroyed upon orders by the CIA director of the time. Luckily, not all documents were taken out, and as a result of a clerical error, more than 20,000 were mislabeled, and a good amount of details regarding the experiments were uncovered. Number 2. The case of Gunther Stoll. It was 1984. Unemployed food engineer Gunther Stoll was living with his wife in Germany. He had been out of work for a while and suffering from a case of paranoia, frequently commenting to his wife that they were coming for him and were out to kill him. He He never really elaborated who they were, but he told his wife that he was afraid of them. On October 25, 1984, while at home with his wife, he suddenly exclaimed, "Now I get it," as if realizing something important. He scrambled for some paper and wrote down the letters YOG''TZE, and afterwards immediately crossed it out. His wife was perplexed but didn't think much of it because of the odd ways he had been acting recently. Soon afterwards, Stoll left his home and went to his favorite pub in Wilmsdorf. He ordered a beer, but before he even managed to take a sip, he collapsed on the floor, knocking himself out to the surprise of the other patrons. They say he wasn't even drunk or tipsy at that point. Stoll managed to regain consciousness around 11 p.m. and then left the bar in his Volkswagen Golf. For the next 2 hours, nobody knows where he went. But by 1 a.m., he reportedly showed up in front of an old woman's house. He had known her since childhood, but since it was so late at night, she encouraged him to go to his parents' house and talk to them, to which he agreed. Before he left, he mumbled something about a horrible incident, but didn't elaborate any further. Stoll never made it to his parents' home. At 3 a.m., 2 truck drivers were driving off Autobahn A45 when they spotted his Volkswagen in a ditch. It had been wrecked, and when they went to investigate, they found him naked, injured, and almost unconscious. The men called the police, and Stoll told them there had been 4 men inside the car with him, but that they had just run off. They asked him if they were his friends, but he said no. An ambulance arrived and took Stoll to the hospital, where he died on the way. This is where the case begins to get really odd. Investigators discovered Stoll had been run over by a different vehicle at a different location. Whoever ran him over then placed him inside his vehicle's passenger seat and drove it into the ditch where it was found. Both truck drivers also independently noted that there was another man in a bright jacket at the crime scene, but that he had disappeared after they called the police. Until now, the case of Stoll remains a mystery. No one knows for sure who the 4 men in his car were, how and where Stoll was run over, and what the letters YOG''TZE mean. There's been speculation that Stoll may simply have been mentally ill and just wrote down a bunch of random letters. But many believe he was killed because he knew something that might incriminate other individuals or even a large company. The letters YOG''TZE could be the license plate for the car that hit him, and that he wrote it down because he knew his killers and the car they drove. Or perhaps it was a psychic premonition of sorts as to what car would end up killing him. So there were 2 of the most secret and mysterious stories around. The world can be a crazy place, and Twisted 2's is sure to show you why. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We have many new scary mystery videos every single week that we know you'll love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.